Okay, I'm going to take some time here to talk about the motions of the planets and also planetary phases. I'll be kind of moving in and out of the screen because I got a lot of stuff on the board here, so we need as much of the board as we can take. Okay. First of all, we're going to talk about planetary motions, and we're going to talk about what we call crowns, or parts of their phases called crowns. This is our sun right here. Okay, and each one of these dots represents one of the planets. Mercury, Venus, Earth. We are the reference point. That's why I've got it in black. Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. We're only going to concern ourselves with this first group right here. We're not going to be concerned with this right here, because most of these you can't even see anywhere. So, all right. Each one of our planets has its own elliptical orbit around the sun, and just like the moon, the elliptical orbit itself also moves around the sun and moves in this direction as well. Each planet comes around the sun in this direction, like so. And the planets from this polar view rotate in a counterclockwise direction. So, they're coming around the sun from a north polar view in a counterclockwise direction, and we're also rotating in a counterclockwise direction. When a planet, in reference to Earth's view, is on this side of the sun, it's called the superior point, or the superior orbit of the planet. It's on what's called its superior point of its orbit. When the planet is on this side of the sun, from our perspective, it is called the inferior side, or in its inferior orbit. So it really doesn't matter where we are at, where the planet is at, as long as it's on this side of the sun or this side of the sun, from our perspective, as to whether it's in a superior or an inferior orbit. Okay? So, when a planet, two planets, Mercury and Venus, have full phases. Like the moon, they go through the same full phases of the moon. They go through a crescent phase, a waxing crescent phase, a gibbous phase, waxing gibbous phase, and so forth. But just like in the ancient world, they didn't have all these different phases. They simply had the horn phases, and they also had the full phases, and then the waxing full phases, waxing phases, and the waning phases. So they had the horn phase and the crown phase, okay, just like the moon. However, because the planets are further away, each one of those phases lasts a little bit longer. So the further away the planet was, the longer each phase lasts. All right? Now, keep in mind that when the Earth is right here, and Mercury is right here, and the Sun is right here, we cannot see either Mercury or Venus. Okay? That's essentially what their dark phase is. However, when they come around this way, when they get to the point that this line right here, they move into what would be called the half portion of the crown. Both of them. Okay? Each one of them there is a little bit longer than the other one. Mercury is there less than Venus is because Venus is further away from the sun. So the bottom line is that as these come around this way, they will move into a crescent phase, and then they get to a crown phase, either Mercury here or Venus here. And this is where we can really start to see them. Okay, we really can't see them in this area right through here because they're in the light of the sun. So as they move around this way, they come through here, they tend to grow more and more in their presentation, and they get to the position where they're more and more in a full position. However, when they're on the other side of the sun is when they're in their full position, at least from the sun's point of view, and what would actually be from our point of view if we could see through the sun, but we would never actually see them in their full position because they're obstructed by the sun. So it comes to this point here where it's half, which they would call the crown, the beginning of the crown, and the crown continues to wax and get bigger and bigger and bigger, and comes around this way, and it gets to the half, and the half again, and eventually it wanes, and then we don't see it anymore, and it starts its cycle again. Okay? These two planets, Mercury and Venus, are the only two planets that go through a full phase like the moon does. Okay? They're the only ones that do so, and the reason for that is because their between us and the sun. Just like our moon at times gets between us and the sun, these planets here get between us and the sun, and as a result, that makes it so that they actually, from our perspective, go through a full phase of planetary phases. Okay? Those phases are horns and crowns. Even if you can't see them, you can actually deduce this. I actually deduced this on my own simply just by putting this up on a board and looking at it. Then I went and looked into the astronomy programs and saw that the phases were exactly as I had deduced. And so if I was able to deduce it, certainly the ancients, who are a lot more smarter than I was, were able to deduce it as well. Okay? Now when we get to these planets here, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, you know, they come around. And they come all the way around through this way and so forth and what have you. And when they're on this side of the sun from us, the opposite side of the sun from us, okay, when they cross this line here, okay, kind of keep in mind, this line moves with us. So as we go along, this line moves like this. We're the reference point for it. So as they come along to the far side of the sun from us, they are in what's called the superior side, or in their superior orbit. When they're on this side over here, they're on the inferior orbit. It doesn't matter whether or not they're closer to us here or further from us here. The fact is it's the position and the orientation to the sun that determines whether it's in a superior or in an inferior orbit. Now these planets here never go through a crescent phase. They are always either in a half or a full phase. Okay? They go from half to full, and then back to half again. They never go less than half. In fact, Jupiter and Saturn never even get to half. They either go to half, or they either go to full, or to gibbous, what we call the gibbous phase, okay? Or, which is also part of the crown phase. So as they're coming along this way, through here, okay, when they're in their superior orbit this way, we see them either at half or at what we call gibbous phase. And as they move through this way, like so, okay, we see them in their full phase. Even though they're on the other side of the sun, okay, we see them in their full phase. Now, of course, as they come across the sun like this, we don't see them, but as they come back on the other side here, we see them in their full phase. They continue in a full phase, essentially, even beyond this point. And then they start going in the case of Mars, to a half, and that's basically the smallest, or shall we say, the most reduced phase of Mars is half. These right here, Jupiter and Saturn, they essentially almost always remain in a full phase. They can go down to a 3/4, or what we call a gibbous phase, okay? But even when they get out here, they go into a full phase. So in this position here, we see them in their full, either their half crown or their full crown. Okay? Remember, our lunar phases. Go back and look at the lunar phases presentation. Okay? And we explained the difference between horns and crowns. Okay? Remember, there was 6 days of horns, and then the remaining days are different phases of each one of the crowns. Okay? So we have, for these planets here, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, they're either half or full. Okay? Or somewhere in between these two. That's the only set of phases that they actually have. So, just by recapping, okay? Here's the line, superior, inferior, okay? Motions going this way, like so, counterclockwise. Orbits going this way, counterclockwise. Rotations, all rotations going counterclockwise. When either this one, or when either Mercury or Venus come across this line, they go into the crown phase. They remain in the crown phase all the way across this way. Okay, and then they start coming out of the crown phase and start waning. These two right here, these three, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, are always in some form of crown phase. When they are on this side over here, they're in their superior position, so we could say that they're in their superior crown phase. I'm going to take time to stop. We're going to switch screens here a little bit, and we're going to go on to the next portion of the video. Thank you.